Hi, everyone. It's Nina Collins. I'm here with Terry Francis, my friend, fellow Woolfer, and the director of the Black Film Center Archive. Is that the correct name? I always,
No, that's it.
okay, Black Film Center Archive, which is based out of University of Indiana in Bloomington. And
Hmm.
it's a very cool place that I learned about when my mom was still alive and I was a young kid. My mom went out to Bloomington, this woman named Phyllis Slotnick, this older white woman. Correct me
Yeah,
if I get anything.
yeah, Klotman at
Well,
at Indiana University.
ran this center, and my mom went out there for like a week and was interviewed, and actually you can find it now online. But anyway, it was a place I always knew of that seemed cool and important. And then fast forward many years, Terry and I met. Terry was a professor at Yale. She's really the driving force who got me to bring back my mother's film, Losing Ground, to life. And then, so we became friends. And then when I started the Woolfer community, she became a Woolfer. And now I see her a lot on Sundays in reflective writing. And we decided that it would be fun to maybe start a series of conversations as Black girls, two Black girls just chatting about stuff. So welcome,
And
Terry.
curiously, our first conversation is about white people.
Right.
But you know what? That is an important testing ground, I think, for friendships between Black women. And, I
It's
think.
hugely important. So, loosely, our topic today, I'm going to lift from an article that we're going to refer to called Why We Need More Close Interracial Friendships and Why We're Bad at Them. Terry and I want to talk about, one of the things we talked about in the Unlearning Racism class, which we did in June and which we still do every Mondays on the Woolfer app. Um, one of our most potentially challenging days was the day we broached the subject of, are white women the most dangerous people in America? And most of us in the conversation were white, not all, but our community is like America. I mean, America is actually becoming such a huge melting pot. Soon whites will be in the minority if they're not already. But in any case, our community is more white than anything else. We have a good number of Black people and Asian and Latin, but Latino, but we want more. And so on this Unlearning Racism call was probably like 20 white women, maybe one or two Black women, one or two mixed women. I'm biracial, as you know. Um, and we had this conversation: are white women the most dangerous women in America? And it was great because we started really talking about the fact that a lot of white women really don't have Black friends, or they'll say, I have a Black friend, or they'll refer to one Black friend. So
Well,
we,
they might think that she's their friend.
well, why don't you talk about that a little? Because what emerged through Unlearning Racism,
Mm-hmm.
it was great when we had a lot, the Black women on the call were super, super valued. The more they showed up, often the better the conversation was. But we didn't want to pressure them to be there. And I am Black and consider myself Black, but I do also very much, as I always say, I had a white grandmother and a Black grandmother, and I was actually super close to both of them. And while I've always identified as Black, I was raised by a Black woman. Um, I really do go both ways, I guess you could say. I've had my first, the man I lost my virginity to was Black. My first boyfriend in eighth grade was Black. But I married two white guys. I have Black friends. I have white friends. One of my kids is super into her Blackness. The one of my kids who
Yes, Ruby.
that's Ruby.
I'm guessing. I don't know.
Then yes, super. But then Ella, who looks the most white,
Is that
only
wrong to
dates
say her
Black guys. Oh no, it's fine. So we go all over the place in my family.
name?
Um, but anyway, so I think we should go to you, Terry, and I want you to say what you think is important to talk about in this subject. Oh, wait, the one thing I wanted to add was just one of the things we did notice in Unlearning Racism that was kind of surprising is this idea of like, these women were there because they want to be open to all these ideas and understand racism more and systemic racism. And it was interesting to think about how much Black culture they had in their lives, how many Black people they had in their lives, and why not. So
Yeah, and I mean, I would also say, do to have they thought about what is at stake? Because once you decide to hold this, what what Blackness sort of comes from and what this is all about, I mean, it's a lot. Um,
do you mean what's at stake to be a white person and have a Black friend?
no, I just mean, there's a life that you can lead where you're just like, la la la, I'm determining what's happening, and America is fantastic, and life is great. And oops, yep, a bad thing happened, but overall, it's great. And I think that's one kind of life. And I think once you enter into knowledge of, what a poet that we're both fans of, Ross Gay, calls the blacksmith of history. Once you enter into knowledge of that,
I have his book here. Hold on.
yeah, oh, the delights.
This guy
Yeah.
is amazing. The Book of Delights, Ross Gay. He's a super studly black man, I will say. And I met him briefly. He's a professor at Indiana University.
Yeah. He was sitting in the front row when you came to IU and was just like, I mean, he looked like he was eating a delicious meal the entire time. It was great.
He is so cute. But anyway, go ahead. What does he say?
Oh yeah, no, he has this great poem because it is interesting. Like, I'm now accustomed to talking to you through poetry and like with poems. So like, yeah, he has this great poem about being mistaken for two other African American poets that he bears no resemblance to whatsoever. And but he talks about, he has this phrase, the blacksmith of history, and how, and this way that like history marks us and makes our lives. And so I guess what I'm thinking about is like, I think there are people who just, they just don't really know what's going on. They mean well or whatever, but they don't know. And I think if you're going to genuinely build a solidarity, and I think solidarity is the right word.
Solidarity is a very good word. Yeah.
Yeah. Then I think you have to like hold that and and to do that, I think you have to become different in a lot of ways. And so, so it's like in the movie that we both kind of, glanced with or talked or watched a little bit. There's,
Oh, let's tell users.
Should we introduce?
Yeah, we should introduce it. So Terri sent me a short film on this subject. Why don't you tell us the name of the film and describe it and how people can find it? Because it's a really good film.
Sure, yeah. This is Cheryl Dunye's short film, Janine. It's one of her early 90s films. She's known as a queer filmmaker, lesbian filmmaker. As she says, I started making films when we were lesbians. And I guess that, when that term is more current than it might be now. And Janine is, the types of films that she makes they combine like diary, like, so it's about her self-making often with making the movie. So she'll talk about like making the movie. Like she made a pornographic film.
Oh, just like my mom used to make.
Called Mommy is Coming. And I was like, what in the world?
Mommy is coming.
I know. I had 20 more minutes to watch. I had to pop out. And but I noted that part of it, she has that same, it's like self-reflexive element and that like diaristic element to it, where the film is going on and the characters are telling you about what they're doing.
Right.
And it's like in some ways it's kind of common now, but I think they're influenced by Cheryl Dunye actually. And so this short film, which is running on Criterion, it's about 9 minutes. And it's about this friend that Cheryl had named Janine. And Janine was this white girl in her class.
Kind of the perfect white girl, the kind of ultimate white girl.
Yes.
The way she describes it. And by the way, for listeners, the film is called Janine, Janine, by Cheryl Dunn. And Dunn is spelled Dunye. And you can find it on Criterion. It's 9 minutes long. And we've also posted it in the Woolfer app. But go on.
Yeah. And you can totally start with a free trial if you're new to Criterion. Also, watch the Black Film Center Archive interview with Bill Gunn that is also streaming on Criterion. But anywho, so this movie is about this friendship. Well, is it a friendship is my first question,
Right.
because she starts out saying, I had, when I was in high school, I had, my best friend was Janine. And then she's like, but was it a best friend? But it wasn't really a best friend. It was really, and she says, a constant struggle. And the struggle is for acceptance, for comfort. I guess she was saying that she hadn't really come out. And then when she does come out, of course, Janine makes it about her. And
she talks about feeling inadequate and feeling unattractive. Like, she talks about all the ways she kind of reflects off of this perfect white girl, and it makes her feel bad about herself.
Yeah, because Janine it's just kind of and Cheryl Cheryl of the film is, thoughtful in that she's saying she made me feel bad about myself, or did I just feel bad about myself, or like, but what's interesting is that Janine represents this kind of aspirational womanhood. And so in wanting to be friends with her, she wants her, because like her sexuality is coming into formation at the same time.
Yeah.
And so,
and hold on, I want to stop for a sec when you say aspirational womanhood, right? Because I just want to be clear, right? That's because white society has determined what's aspirational, right? It's right. So let's just, what's been forced upon all of us as aspirational.
Totally. And because, there's nothing wrong with Cheryl.
Right. Right. Cheryl's fabulous. In fact, she makes awesome movies.
Exactly. And who the fuck is Janine? She's
exactly.
Right?
Like,
she's the subject.
I don't think Janine's doing anything.
Exactly. She's the jumping off point for this great artwork and reflection. But yeah, but that ends up being, I don't know that that it's part like that. I can't remember if that's part of the monologue of the film, but definitely yes. Like, Janine represents something that Cheryl has been taught to value, and Janine is not at all thoughtful about that. Right. That's the thing, is she's helping this policing. So when there's a moment, very intimate, mundane, kind of weird, maybe a little kinky, where Cheryl is washing her hair and says something about the shampoo, but Janine says you're doing it wrong or something. Like, why are you doing it like that?
Oh yeah, no, I know what it is. So the black girl is at the white girl's house after school, after practice one day, and she's washing her hair, and she pours the shampoo into her hand, no, straight onto her hair. And Janine, the white girl, says, "You're doing it wrong. What are you doing?" And Janine then feels like, again, like she's wrong somehow, where it's just it's a weird moment. It's a weird moment.
Because it's like, why are you examining her in this way? And it also reveals, I think, Cheryl's vulnerability, that she wants to be approved of. And we want to be approved of by the people we admire and that we like and that we want in our lives. But we could also not be tested on it. That's not really a friendship.
But it is, see, then I go to the white side of me that also can say, well, in truth, we don't know whether Janine may have been studying Cheryl, her black friend, as kind of other, and thinking she's doing something strange that maybe black people do, or that's just like stupid or wrong. Or she might just be an annoying bitch who just nitpicks at everything. We don't really know what actually happened in that moment. So the opportunity for misunderstanding is so incredibly deep and complicated. So, I do hear you. And what you're saying is that, I think what you're saying is that white women, if they want to be friends with black women, have to do more work, because they have to really think about all the ways that the dynamic is at play. And they often just ignore it, right? And just pretend. And correct me if I'm not summarizing this, but I feel like that's what you're saying.
Oh, no, I think that's what I'm saying. I think I'm saying that, I think you have to be aware of how your friend is vulnerable. And
always. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what I mean by being aware of how you have to change.
Point. Yeah, that's a very good point.
That you can't.
And then seeing race as a vulnerability, that's actually a really, really good point, right? That people don't.
It's a threat to your goddamn life. And when people come here with these I didn't mean that, but excuse me. Like, even me coming into this conversation, I'm here to talk about the time someone tried to murder me.
Yeah.
That's like,
That's
that's
a
the,
that's a huge fucking thing. Right.
yeah.
Right.
So like I think like so I think that's where it's difficult to establish equity and trust in a friendship if the other person doesn't understand when you're talking about something, you are not telling a joke. You're not waving your hands to say hello. You are drowning. You are
Right.
describing something, terrible that happened to you, and that where others see misunderstanding, you see a pattern. You see.
So I want to bring up, I can't remember what it's called. You know, the Hulu show that came out a few months ago based on the Celeste Ng book, the Kerry Washington, Reese Witherspoon.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah. I want to say Killing Fields. That's not what it was. Killing Fire,
no,
little
hold
fire,
on. I
fire,
will.
because it has a fire at the beginning. And
Yeah, it has a fire. The house burns down. Exactly right. Hold on, I'm going to
yeah,
look it up.
well,
Reese
I
Witherspoon.
know exactly. I watched the whole thing with deep fascination.
I actually could not watch the whole thing because even though I love Kerry Washington, it actually Little Fires Everywhere. Little Fires Everywhere, based on the book by Celeste Ng, which is NG. It's a great book. People say that the series is fantastic by the end, and I should probably go back to it. But I found it so painful the way, because the book actually in the book the characters are not black and white. They're two white women, I'm pretty sure. And so there's a whole racial overlay that's put into the Hulu series, but it is really what we're talking about, right? I mean, Reese Witherspoon comes off as clueless and arrogant and not remotely aware of this person she's dealing with. I mean, it's a little different because they don't set out to be friends from the beginning, right? Reese is kind of fascinated by Carrie and she's her tenant. So it is different, but I don't know. I just thought that was worth bringing up. And I also want to talk about like how many white friends we talked about this at the beginning, kind of before we started recording, like how many white friends do you have? And do we have advice for white listeners who know that they would like to have more black friends in their lives? I mean, I think it's really pertinent to the Woolfer because in the Woolfer community, we want more black members, we want more Asian members, we want more of everyone, and we really are truly a sisterhood of friends. And so, and I've watched you on those Zooms, like in reflective writing. You've made a lot of friends there. I don't know if you consider them real friends, but women love you in the community. And so, how do black women and white women come closer together?
I don't know that I have the answer to that question.
It's
I mean, I can say that anyone who's in my life is someone I trust to hold that life. And I'm not spending time explaining American history to them. I'm not their teacher.
yeah.
I will not be doing that. I have a job as a teacher. If you'd like to be in my class, screening race and ethnicity meets 3:15 to 4:30. I can.
PhD. She's a fabulous professor.
No, do you know what I mean? I mean, because teaching, there's no reciprocity there. You cannot have some. Do you know what I mean? I think that's always the sort of assessment. It's like,
Okay, but then, so I really hear you, but I'm trying to also think of this. Like, I'm thinking about the white women in Unlearning Racism. There was one woman who was constantly saying, how can we get more black women to come to this class? And I had to keep explaining to her, you can't expect black women to do the work. You have to do the work.
well,
But so say,
why would black women go to something called Unlearning Racism?
well, it's a very good point. Some came, it was very generous of them to spend their time.
That's it.
But
It was very generous of them to go into something to describe the times that someone tried to murder them. That was very kind. And probably I think that how I feel is I got your back. I don't want you in there with the wolves of Woolfer. Do you know what I mean? I think there's also that I've seen you as a black woman, and I understand about being a black woman in a leadership position. I understand about being a black woman in public, and I was like, Nina goes nowhere by herself. I will be I will be in the discussion. Like I will help out. But I think, and just that's just how I roll. But I think that like in that situation, I think you really have to understand the pressure on a person to do that if they decide to do that. And I think that's what I mean with my first question. It's like I want to know more. I want all these things. Well, yes, we would all like things. What are you willing to risk? What is the work that you're going to do? I cannot carry you into that. I would not recommend just watching movies to get into it. I would not, because movies have their own histories.
You mean to get into it, to coming closer to having Black friendships?
Yeah, because that's one of the ways that is often recommended when we're in that, when I say we, I mean white people are in that mode. It's like
bringing in Black culture, kind of exposing themselves more, right?
As a sort of proxy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's really problematic. And so it's really about, well, let's look at whiteness. What's the structure of whiteness? This assumption of wanting and the legitimacy of wanting. How is that identity constructed? And I'm not, this is not about like, foods people eat or what. No, this is about how did people inhabit power in that space, and how does that power then shape intimate relationships?
Right. And that is the crux of it.
Oh, I think so.
Very much so. But what I think what I want to try and unpack a little is I can understand, and I wonder how, there's that whole trope of the white woman crying, right? The angry Black woman at work makes the white woman cry, right? It's infuriating, right? So, the whole thing about the strong Black woman expressing an opinion, and I'm not defending it in any way, but I can see that for a white woman, say, listening to this conversation, she may think, well, I don't want to try and become friends with a Black woman because I'm going to fuck up and she's going to be furious at me, or she's going to be hurt, or I won't do it right, or how do I, and I don't know what the answer is to this, but I do know that we'd all be richer for more interracial friendships, that we'd all be richer for more friendships and love in general, right? That seems to be given.
God, yes. Nell Painter, the artist and historian, says she wrote this great book, The History of White People.
Wait, what's her name?
Nell Painter.
Okay.
She's an author and a retired professor from Princeton and stuff. And, she said this great thing one time about, she's like, maybe just don't talk about, you want to get along with people who are different from you, just don't talk about how you're different. Do you have something in common with this person? Why don't you guys talk about that? And when something emerges, just listen. Like, just like hang out and listen and just be there. And I remember being like, well, goddamn, well, that's a heck of a thought right there. No, because what she was addressing wasn't the aspect of inequity and racism in which the white person cannot imagine that somebody else is also into surfing who doesn't look like them.
Right. That's a huge thing. Yes.
That's a huge thing. And so imagining shared interests. And so when the Black, a thing that people do, baker shows up, you're just sort of like, oh, right on. So we're both like into baking cakes. Let's bake cakes and let's talk about cakes. Do you know what I mean?
Like reflective writing. We like writing about off of poems sometimes. This is fun. This is an activity we like doing together.
Exactly. An activity we like doing together. Let's do that. But if I bring something like, I don't know what it could be, the time that someone tried to murder me, then it's like, well, I don't know.
Well, let's try something that's not as incredibly intense and explosive. Let's try the time a white woman in a
No,
meeting in an academic setting put me down. And
no, but what I'm saying is that those things are a threat to your livelihood and your life. That's what I'm
yes,
saying.
I understand that. I'm just trying to bring it down to the people listening can understand, can think about like a daily, like things that happen to you every day that you're going to want to talk about with your close friends, or sometimes you're just going to be upset about and you want to hash it out. Can you have that conversation?
Well, that's always the question. And I think friendships, something that happens a lot of times with women friendships is that there is an assumption of intimacy, like super right away.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that, yeah, let's just read the poems and we'll see. we'll see what friends are. Because liking someone and respecting them are different. Liking someone and knowing what you need to hold in order to hold this person, what
Mm-hmm.
it means to sit beside them, those are really different things. And I think I've learned over time to it's fine, just let that process happen.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
trust takes a long time to build trust, right? You
yeah,
don't just, right. I mean, I always feel like it's like I feel like I have a million friendships, acquaintances, right? There are lots of women I know and really like, and but I don't have a lot of superficial relationships. So I feel like people are either like out there, and I'm nice and friendly with them, and that's fine, or they're really like I have to be able to have real conversations with
yeah,
people if you're really a friend, and that trust um is special and grows. And but you're right, between Black women and white women it's particularly thorny. It's complicated to get there for all these reasons.
and I would even say, I mean, in terms of like whiteness, I think it is like, people who appear to be white, but I think it's also people who just occupy that space of whiteness in terms of just being like a super institutional thinker or just like really not that interested in history or the struggle, or just is not interested in, oh, why are you so negative, oh, you're being so toxic, or like whatever, like, so like for me, someone who, whatever their background, they cannot live in the reality that is defining my day to day. I'm not going to spend my time debating that. I'm good at writing. I will just write and create that and enter into the debate that way. But over brunch, when I'm in my private time, no, 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 nope, 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 boundary. No, no, no. I would like a private life, please. I am not a concept in your mind. I'm a person.
Right.
And so I think a lot of it is, and this, I mean, and I think this is so much about like just women's lives, like constantly establishing what your boundaries and your needs are and moving back from them. But I think there is a kind of like a momentum of whiteness, of a momentum of women friendships, that assumption of intimacy
Mm-hmm.
that is difficult to pause and reflect upon. And
Yeah.
and then so like then the other person seems tentative, they're mean, they're not nice, they're well, maybe they're just living their lives, maybe they're thinking. People are allowed to think about whether they want
Want
what you want.
engagement, want what you want. And this makes me think of two things that I think of all the time, just like words of wisdom. One, it's not usually about you, right? People are in often their minds doing all sorts of things, and we often think it's about us, and it's not. And it also reminds me of an interview I did earlier this summer with Mia Birdsong, this Black activist in Oakland who just wrote a book. I can't remember what her book is called, but it's great.
It's like about
Um,
community and
it's
belonging.
about community. Yeah, I'm looking on my bookshelf. In any case, she said to me something that seems so obvious that I've repeated a bunch of times and I'm going to keep repeating, that she learned from her own therapist, which is that resentment is a sign that your boundaries have been crossed. It's such a simple concept, but it's so good if you think about it in your romantic life, in your friendships. If you start feeling resentful, it's because you've allowed, or someone has, you've allowed someone to go too far, or someone has pushed too far in a way that just doesn't work for you. And I think it's something as middle-aged women, I know I've gotten a shitload better at managing my boundaries and was so bad at it when I was young. um, but I think thinking about that is a way that we could maybe, that could help us as we try and forge these
Yeah.
interracial friendships, right?
I mean, like, to what degree do you understand my vulnerabilities coming into this conversation. Let's model friendship for our wolf. Like,
Okay.
you know what I mean? Like, how do you see our
Well,
negotiation?
I see your vulnerabilities here. I mean, look, so our positions in the community, right, are different. I run the community and I'm biracial. And
You got that good hair.
I've got that. Well, and I also blew it out this week. I go through phases. It just feels so much more professional. But I will tell you, Ruby, my daughter Ruby, gives me shit every time I blow out my hair. She's like, "Why are you trying to look white?" I'm just trying to have easy hair for a couple days. But anyway, you are one of the maybe, I mean, how many really active Black women in the community do we have? I'd say like that I know of offhand, I can think of probably 30 who are like, who really post and comment and show up to stuff. You know, we have a lot of members who just are silent in the background. But so I would imagine, and I tried to get you to come to Unlearning Racism and you didn't want to, which I totally respected. And originally, when we planned this conversation, we were going to do talking about culture, talking about books, which maybe we'll do next month. But this ended up emerging as something we wanted to talk about. And I was thrilled, but I was also kind of surprised because I think for you, it's scary. You don't need to expose yourself to the community on your feelings about friendships with white women. I mean, that's a lot, right?
It's a very white space, you know.
White space. So I felt protective. I felt proud of you because I'm, you know, a big advocate for people just saying what's going on anyway. I think it's always better, and sharing their truth and all that. And I felt protective of you because I don't want you to feel nervous, but I also was not nervous about the conversation. I know that anything you say is going to be fine, that we're a safe space, that these women genuinely have good intentions and are awesome. And I think it can only help because I really do think people don't know how to do it in both ways. My oldest best friend in the whole world, Lalu, we've grown up together, is half Black, half white like me. And we've never had any racial issues in our friendship. But I had a very, very close, like a best friend type friend all through my 30s who was Black. And she often, and our friendship ended up falling apart in a very hurtful way when I got divorced. And she had I felt a lot of weird rivalry with me, but she was constantly basically implicitly criticizing me for saying I'm not Black enough. And one of the things she did at the end of our friendship is she had a lunch for a bunch of Black moms at St. Anne's, the school where our kids go to. And she didn't invite me. And one of the women she invited is half Black, half white, but has a white mom. Like I always think if you have like I have a Black mother, thank you very much. Like I am Black. Like don't tell me I'm not Black.
Yeah.
And she didn't invite me, and she basically said to people like she's not Black enough. And our friendship ended. And you know, I'm sure it was about a lot of other things, but that really I mean, it hurt me because it was a friendship and it was complicated, but intellectually that just pisses me the fuck off. Like it really makes me mad. Like, don't tell me who I am. And I've had moments with white women where I feel like they're being clueless, but honestly, I don't know why it doesn't bother me that much. I just feel like they're being, I mean, obviously if someone's being racist, I'll call them on it. If someone's being like but I don't, for whatever reason, I think it has something to do with the way my mom raised me around this stuff. I don't feel very vulnerable around race stuff. I feel angry. I get intellectually pissed off. I feel emotional seeing Black people get murdered by police is obviously hugely emotional. But for me personally, I don't walk around feeling vulnerable, like in the community as a Black woman. I'm kind of like, fuck it, like whatever. I'm me. Yeah. But anyway, I did worry. I do feel really appreciative that you wanted to have this conversation because I think the more we have these conversations, really, I mean, I'm sure a lot of women, white women, are going to reach out to me or us and say that this was helpful because they don't know. Like you're right. The woman you described at the beginning of the conversation is walking around thinking America's great and everything's fine. The kind of Reese Witherspoon's character is the extreme end of that, but that's a very easy thing to do, right? To just not think about how your Black friends are feeling. Or your Black acquaintances are feeling, or whatever you want to call them, your Black colleagues, you know, your Black schoolmates.
Yeah. I mean, Well,
It's
this is getting
interesting.
juicy. I mean, it's I experienced that a little differently. It was kind of interesting. I I whenever I do things, I actually imagine always a Black audience, and I'm actually really excited to find out. Well, who are the other Black girls in the Woolfer? And so I think like that's one
Wait,
piece.
I have to pause because that's a really interesting thing you said. So when you said whenever you're speaking, you imagine a Black audience.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that's
I
I don't
love
know.
I
That's
mean,
who.
that makes sense. But
Yeah.
it's interesting. I've never thought, who do I imagine when I'm speaking? And I don't ever think about it in terms of race. I think about it in terms of women, I
Yeah.
guess. And I want to say we have a comment from Daphne Boxhill, who's one of our fabulous women of color in the community who lives in Toronto. And Daphne says, this is such an interesting topic. I don't really have any close Black friends. My closest friends are white males. Have I felt weird about this? Definitely. I would love to see a part two, which is interesting and makes me think that maybe as we continue this series, maybe sometimes we'll invite other Black women from the community on. Maybe we'll just keep talking about this. Who knows? We'll talk about whatever we want, but it's a very good and important subject.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm trying to remember. Well, okay, so that when I was replying to your email, there was another conversation that was happening, and I was not so much suggesting that we talk about this as replying to that earlier email with this article that I had just seen. But
Oh,
but then it was like, well, okay, interesting. This is happening. But this is when I think that's a really interesting like sort of dynamic. So then I really had to think quickly.
yeah.
Do I want to do this? And then do I mean, do I want to do this?
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting to talk to people, to talk to you. I've been wanting actually, because I mean, you're very interesting to me. And
Thank
so,
you too, sweetie.
you know, and so I think being able to find out, but I think we are very different in the sense that um, I think that you know, like Blackness is something that it is, yes, there are contexts in which we assert that, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but then there are contexts in which that it's tangential. It's like being Native American. I mean, if you tell the Cherokee, oh, I'm 10% this, they'll be like, excuse me, we've never heard of you, we don't know you.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? There's a politics of refusal there,
Yeah.
where they are just like, no, actually, this kinship is going to be based on your commitments,
Mm.
on your knowledge. Um, you
That's
know,
a very good point, right? Because in the history of America, right, there's the whole one drop rule. And of course, there's colorism and there's light privilege, right? Which, I definitely kind of came to terms during unlearning racism more with my own colorism and privilege than I'd ever really thought about. And um, so it's interesting that I didn't know that about the Native American
oh
world.
yeah,
They
yeah.
do it that way because that makes a lot of sense. I just want to say another reader or listener just wrote in, Vicky Simon, who's white and lives in Portland, and said, I have one Black friend who I feel like I have to walk on eggs with. She's very aware of white privilege and has called me out. This is helpful. So I'm glad this is helpful, Vicky. And, we want to help.
Good. Be on the eggshells.
Yeah, be on eggshells and I mean, I don't know. Well, what would you say actually, really? Be on eggshells?
Yeah, I would say what I'm about to say. You know, yes, it being in the world is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for me. If you want to sit beside me, it then you're going to be uncomfortable because you're going to have to know things that are not pleasant. And if we're going to sit beside each other, there's a potential for that to be a space of rest and comfort and kind of the joy of struggle, but that takes time. And I think you have to respect that depth. So it's a very powerful potential. It's a very powerful, and I mean that between any two people, any two, because and any two Black people, like you and I are not experiencing Blackness in the same way, and you know, I am aware of like everything you're saying is a very familiar, like, you know, kind of intellectually like a familiar dynamic in history.
Yeah.
And I think, But I think it's more just like things like, oh, this is a safe space. Well, what comes up in my mind, well, is it? In what ways is it safe? Let's.
Right. And also you could feel angry at me, like because my experience of blackness is different. And we might have to look at that sometimes also, right? I mean, that's complicated.
You know, it's very complicated. And I think it's and I think that, I mean, I think part of it's interesting to reflect on like this project that we're doing, like the conversation as a project, and like
Yeah.
what does it mean to talk, what does it mean to say that you're two Black girls talking about culture? And that what, because what intrigues me about that is that it suggests this kind of like similarity that like I think instantly we realize there's not a lot of similarity, and so the conversation is about like navigating and negotiating. How do we see things differently? Where are we coming
Right.
in?
Well,
Uh,
like I really wanted, like I think it would be really fun and interesting to talk about the recent Black books, you know, Raven Leilani's Luster, um, The Vanishing Half, the Yagasi, right? All these, because it would be interesting to see how we, like I, as you know, I think pretty much only read books by women, and I read all those books because they're interesting literary books, and I'm super psyched that they're written by Black women. I'm not reading them because they're written by Black women. They're just like really good literary books
yeah.
that are out. Um, but how it would be interesting to have a conversation, I think, about how we see Black culture differently, because I'm usually like I'm just really excited that it's a better moment for Black, like that more Black culture is coming out, and there's so much that's really good. But yeah, I'm sure we'd see it really differently. Oh, we have two comments. Mary Bateman says, I have some Black women friends, Mary's presumably white, but I always suspect that there is an emotional withholding and that I'm not completely trusted. Perhaps they think I don't really get it, and they might be right. Even though I'm a pretty woke person and fully support BLM, this is confusing to me. How do I create a bridge of trust to better support my friends? She and lots of other people also say they love your glasses. Terri
Yeah,
does have the best glasses.
yeah. Well, I started wearing these because I saw your glasses, and I was just like, what? The fuck? Those are great. I love that shape. And then I got the clear kind,
Oh,
and
I
then
love the clear ones. They're
yeah, I got the clear kind. But then something happened to them, and they became uneven, and I didn't discover that they were uneven until I did an interview with this filmmaker, Jatavi Gary. Looked at the video, and I was like, my glasses are crooked, and none of these motherfuckers told me. Anyway, so then I ended up, so now I'm into the red ones. But I think, you know, trust is just, it's not about you. Just simmer down. That's the thing about, like, it's not about you. Just simmer it down. People do not have to accept or trust you. Just,
But if Mary wants to feel closer to her Black friends, and she wants them to trust her.
but maybe they don't, and they won't. And that's fine. Just,
Okay.
just, just keep doing, you know, do you and live your life. We don't always get what we want. That's so American. You don't get what you want all the time. What is it with this country? You have to like me? Come on. There are a lot of people who don't like me, and I have to live with that.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's part, you know, that's the part of that, this, you know, the other dynamic is just living with difficulty and not getting what you want and being uncomfortable. And then you're in this relationship with someone who's making it your job to make them uncomfortable. And that's a lot of,
Yeah.
that's a lot of work. So then I don't know. I think, I mean, yeah, I just think, I think there's an overemphasis on what friendships can even do. We learn that from the movies, you know, all of these movies about cross-racial friendship and stuff. And I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be the Black character in someone's movie. I'm in my own movie.
Yeah.
And,
No, these are great points.
you know, I'm right.
Corinne Hammonds, who's a great Woolfer, just said, I thought about that. Is this a safe space? And what does that mean? She said, I recently said at work, this is a safe space. And my colleague said, not for me. So point well taken.
Yeah.
Okay, we should wrap up because it's 12:53. I love you.
You see, this is what happens when, you know, all this talking conversation.
No, it's fabulous. And we're going to do more of it. We're going to do it once a month. I love you.
I am delighted to be in this conversation.
It's really fun. And you have the best pink couch I've ever seen.
Thank you, Drew Barrymore.
Talk to you soon.
All right.